past and waves at it.
Right.
Yeah, and they say, "Did you see the gorilla?" And everyone's like, "No." And
no,
right there, we didn't see it.
Hello and welcome to episode 143 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is for marketing and the F is for you decide. As you're probably wondering, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm no rock star, but I picked up a thing or two over the last 20 years on my tour from sysadmin to CMO, and on this weekly podcast, I chat to the true rock stars, my fabulous guests and chums, to share some marketing street knowledge to inspire your inner rock star. Come say hello, you can contact us and find all the show notes at rockstarcmo.com. I'm recording this on Saturday the 3rd of December. Thanks for joining us. I hope you've had a good week and you are well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. In this week's episode, Jeff Clark and I discuss ARTE as a strategy for campaigns. Executive coach Richard Medcalf returns for a chat about his book, Making Time for Strategy. And we wind down the week in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar with Robert Rose for a cocktail and a marketing thought. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back. After this word.
We'll be right back.
After this word.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the boys' club of advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe.
On to our first segment, the Marketing Studio with Jeff Clark, our resident Rockstar CMO advisor, for a chat about ARTE.
Well, hello, Ian. It's so nice to have you back in the studio. Come on in.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and welcome to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, and we need to celebrate the fact that both England and the United States have made it into the what is it called? The knockout round of the World Cup.
Yeah, last 16. Yes, which is great. And then I was I did my little midweek thing in the middle of the week, right, with Liz High.
Yep.
And I I realised for listeners, if you listen to it, listeners, I do apologise. Me and Liz were talking about football, but we didn't actually mention the game that we were talking about. So it's all a bit obscure. So I can rectify that by you and me, Jeff, saying yes. The reference to the game that me and Liz were talking about was USA versus England, and ultimately both of us have gone through based on what we did after that, which is excellent. Although my man Pulisic, who plays for my team Chelsea, seems to have very much hurt himself in a very delicate part of his body.
My son, who's the football hero and our football expert in our family, says that he is going to be ready to go on Saturday.
And it looked incredibly painful.
Yes.
They called it a pelvic contusion, and if I know anything about pelvics, I don't want a contusion.
Really? Avoid that at all costs.
Absolutely.
Don't fly into another player while you're knocking around the field.
Yes. All right. So, yes, and you got the Dutch next, haven't you? And
yes, we do.
In the weekend. All right. And neither of those games would have happened by the time this airs, which will be on Saturday morning. So we're all good with that.
Awesome.
Anyway, let's get to the boring
topic at hand.
Marketing. We're going to talk about this week, after our little break last week of having a little bit of a holiday chat, we're going to go back to what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about a deep, according to my notes, holistic understanding of the personas. I think we know who wrote those notes. And we're going to talk about the art of the campaign, because what you did when we were discussing this, I'm always banging on about marketing needs to create art, right?
Right.
Awareness, revenue, and trust. And I think in that conversation, you added an E to the end of my little TLA to make it a 4-letter acronym. That's an FLA.
and make it a little. It gives it a little French, gives it a little continental flair. The ARTE campaign.
I like the fact that we've added an F into it. So now we're creating FLAs, 4-letter acronyms. Effing 4-letter acronyms. And so you've added enablement into ARTE. So where should we start with this? So what we want to do now is we've moved on from creating our personas, and we're now talking about how we create the campaigns. We did a little bit of that, didn't we? So why don't we start off with what do we mean by a campaign?
A little terminology grounding. So so which I think is important, and the term campaign has been misused in marketing circles for a long time, because oftentimes we use it as thinking about an individual tactic, like an email campaign, a webcast campaign, or whatever. And as we've mentioned before on this podcast, that gets encoded into our marketing systems, like our marketing automation platform or CM. The campaign is that single thing that created the touch. Yeah. And it's like, for one thing, it's like the people who are in charge of the tactics and the systems themselves kind of want to own the campaign, but that really forces us into what I would say is random acts of engagement, where we've pinged, we've made an impression, we got a response, but we haven't really sealed the deal or told the whole story.
Yeah, I do have a question about that though, because I think this is really interesting, because I completely agree with you. We use the word campaign rather loosely to mean it to be like a 3 email nurture series like we want to launch our whole brand, right? Yep. So I think there's some interesting, and that's not what we're here for, but it'd be interesting to chat with you one time about what we should call the individual streams, I guess, within a campaign, but that's it. And I also love the fact what you're saying about random acts of engagement. Normally I talk about random acts of content, but you're absolutely right, Ray. These things are disconnected, and if they don't ladder up to something. Yep.
And when I was at Forrester Serious Decisions, and I did a lot of work with clients on campaign, definition planning, all aspects of campaigning. And we would have to say, well, sometimes people call these things, larger things, programs or initiatives, or so to an extent, we shouldn't get hung up on the nomenclature as much as to say, we need to step back from the random act of engagement or the tactic or maybe it's a program of tactics or whatever, so. You can have all the various ways you're categorizing these things, but we really need to take a step back to look at the broader picture of what we're trying to do in engaging, all the different personas that are at our target accounts that are interested in the particular solution or the need we are trying to address. And when you do that, then you're taking that broader view. Then it's not like an individual product or solution you're pushing. It's the buyer need at the account or the organization level. It's not the specific tactic. It's kind of how you choreograph the roll up of all your different tactic types. And it's what's the business outcome we're trying to drive. It's not just leads. It's like we're trying to drive revenue growth, improve customer satisfaction, and really when you talk about, if you're trying to appeal to a specific buyer need with a typical solution that you've got, the runtime for your activity is, it could be the year you're planning for, it could be it could be several years. I mean, until something changes in the dynamic of there's a customer need out there and there's a solution you provide, until something really dramatic changes, you can kind of make that campaign, if you will, run for a long period of time.
Right. So from what you're saying there then, and we're always saying this on the show anyway, isn't it, that we need to be buyer need focused in terms of these things. So you're saying that you make the campaign centric around a particular need that you're addressing. Right. Now, at what level are we talking now? I mean, if we're talking about, I don't know, B2B tech topic, are we talking about the product needs to be secure? Are we talking about big topics like that, at sort of a high level sort of thing? I
think we're talking at a high level where, let's say you sell, solutions that help people, track expenses or something like that. Then you're trying to say that, okay, there's a higher level need for efficiency and cost containment in how we track expenses, and so that is a high level need of which again there's going to be many personas that are interested in that. People in finance, people in travel department, people in each of the individual business units, and there's going to be different players in terms of who's championing a new solution and who's going to make a decision there. So you're trying to hit all of those players to that need, and so that's where you need to encompass, and this is where the art part comes in, because you need to encompass a broader array of activity types, if you will, tactic types to address awareness, driving revenue, building trust with that a client, and then enabling your team, sales and marketing, to be able to be part of this campaign.
So it's just the beginning part of talking about the campaign then. So really we're saying the campaign is the big thing. It's the big message we want to get across in terms of the problem that we solve and the need and the buyer's need. So we're talking about, if it's like expenses software, the fact that we can bring efficiency to their business. If it's like a CDP, the fact that you provide 100% view of your customer, or 360 view of your customer, whatever. It's that big message that you're going to say across the piece. And then it's not a single tactic. It's a whole bunch of things that we're doing around that stuff, right? And it's about all of the elements of ARTE, right? It's about raising awareness. It's about revenue, driving leads. And it's about trust, right? So let's expand on that. Then why did you add the E to my ARTE for a start? But
so a couple things. So I'll address the YE first, and then I'll get into the AR and the T. But the YE is that. So if you're scoping the campaign at the level we were just discussing, then most organizations are going to probably be running 2, 3, 4 campaigns, because it's based on the different customer sets that they're, total addressable markets they're trying to attract, and then also the buyers within that and the need that's expressed in that. So unless you're a gigantic organization, obviously, when you get up to a General Electric, an Oracle, or whatever, then it's like things get a lot more complicated than. And you may be running many different campaigns because you've got business units that have a tighter focus that are doing this. But the Y enablement is that, okay, if I'm going to run something that is coordinated this level, I need to get everybody on board as to what we're doing. So everybody in marketing is going to contribute to this, because there's people in marketing that contribute to building awareness and brand. There's people in marketing going to contribute to how we're driving demand creation or impacting revenue. And then there's going to be people involved in the various aspects of engagement to help us build trust. And then I've got people in sales that are going to be doing those three things too, particularly building trust through their personal engagement, and then also obviously impacting revenue. So everybody in sales and marketing needs to be on the same page with how we're taking this approach. And that's where the enablement comes in. You've done all the work to understand the personas. You've understand their buying needs. You understand, how they work, where they go for content, how they like to engage. So, geez, if I have all this information, I better tell everybody else because because they're gonna do better. And one of the other key things about running a campaign at this level is what was kind of maybe obvious, is that it requires a lot of collaboration across the functions. So that's part of this enablement function, or it's enablement part of the art, is to make sure you're bringing people up to speed and saying, what's your role in running this campaign? So when you do your emails, or you're running your events, or whether you're making your sales calls, you've got a context for how we're trying to approach this set of accounts and their needs.
And so do you think, because The reason why I used ARTE really was just, these are the top level objectives that the C-suite would understand: awareness, revenue, and trust. It creates that kind of higher order of if it's like marketing Maslow's
hierarchy
right?
of marketing.
Yeah.
Ooh. Now there's a model we could build on.
the effing marketing hierarchy
pyramid.
need. But do you think that enablement then really does sits at that level? Then it's something that we as marketers have to have as that fourth pillar of everything we do.
I absolutely, because otherwise you're trying to move an organization, and again, marketing. I mean, this is also part of marketing being more business focused. I mean, we're not just about the nice colors and the way the logo is treated and all that stuff. We're about helping the organization execute on its business goals. Again, so whether that's driving new revenue or retaining customers or improving satisfaction, we're trying to drive, outcomes at that level. So that requires working on awareness, revenue, and trust, and it also requires enabling the organization to play their part.
Yeah, no, I really like that. That's great. And then also, I think you've been then expanding this in between us talking on this podcast to become really an approach to how you might approach campaigns, as we've just been discussing. So how does this approach then improve our campaigns, make better campaigns?
Well, one thing is that it would acknowledge that like for a particular solution you're bringing to address a buyer need, you may be in different positions in the market. So you may need to be putting, if you think about, the awareness, revenue, trust, and enablement, is that you may be in a position where you need to drive more awareness because you need to set up the ability for your demand creation activity to work. If you're not well known in a particular market, or you're not well known for doing that particular, addressing that particular need, whereas if you are well established in the market, you may be working on more driving revenue. If you're in a situation where you're trying to, maybe you're a big player, but you're trying to improve your customer satisfaction, you're trying to make sure you've got good customer retention. Well, then the trust you build through engagement is going to be where you want to put most of your emphasis. So this kind of model lets you sort of dial one area up and one area down, in addition to making sure you're coordinated across these things. You got the same message addressing the same needs, or consistent message addressing the needs. It lets you dial one thing up or down, and so it gives you some flexibility.
And also, I mean, I guess I'm slightly biased with the ARTE part anyway, because I've always thought of it as well that, if you're a startup, then, although you need all of them, awareness, revenue, and trust, right? But if you're a startup, you're probably going to be needing to think a lot more about awareness, as you were just saying.
Absolutely.
And then other more established organizations need to focus more on revenue. And then, there are organizations that don't have so much trust that perhaps they need to focus there, right?
They are out there. Yes, they are.
Yeah. And then I think, to your point, adding enablement is there are some organizations, very fine marketing teams, but that's a little goldfish bowl within the organization. Not everybody's singing from that hymn sheet. So I think that's interesting. But to sort of drill down a bit more, what are the key things about that approach? What changes when you take this approach, basically? What are you thinking about differently?
Well, I think one of the things is you're thinking about the fact that your market, again, you may be in different stages in your market, but also the accounts that you are working with, you're trying to engage, they're going to be at different stages, right? So there are different stages of awareness and readiness. So where you put, how you build the content and your engagement, your tactic mix is got to be relevant to where the accounts are. Well, the fact that you've got accounts and personas that are at different levels of awareness of you, and at different points at which they want to engage with you, different ways they want to engage with you. So you're helping to paint the broader picture that says, here's how we're trying to make sure we're engaging these people and driving our business outcomes. And the buyer's journey, is and we've talked about this in the show before. I mean, there's lots of different models for buyer journeys, but we all know that, it's a fairly complicated cycle that companies go through, and that the personas that those companies go through. And some personas are driving decision making. Some people are engaging early in the process. Some are engaging late in the process. So again, as you plan your campaign content and tactics, you're trying to make sure you're addressing all of those aspects. And again, not just looking, if again, stepping back to the tactic view, if I step back to the tactic view, I'm one touch among, I don't know I can't remember what the latest data is, but it's like it takes 20 plus touches to actually, win an account. And so it's that's just the one touch. So I got to take that broader view and making sure I've built my content and my tactics for whoever's the champion, who are the influencers that may be engaging early in the process, and then who are the decision makers and the gatekeepers who are going to be engaging later in the process.
And then pulling the levers differently depending on who they are, and presumably as well, if we're thinking about our customers' needs, if we're B2B selling, and our audience are marketers, and it might be that their big pressure, their big need is awareness of their organization. So we need to think differently about how we present our art to them, right?
Yes,
you know what I mean? It's understanding their needs and what's driving them, but perhaps around art as well. So that's interesting.
The other thing about this is that, again, taking this broader view, is you should be setting your goals for the campaign at the level of the business outcomes you're trying to drive. Yeah. So, what's the revenue you're trying to drive? What's the improvement in customer satisfaction? What's the improvement in awareness? Are we taking people from a certain point in awareness to a deeper level of preference for us? And so the goals should be set at this level. And because you're working across, all these different ways of engaging with all the different personas, you should be able to, at the campaign level, be pretty accurate in how you're helping to achieve those goals. It gets much harder to say, what's the return on investment of a webcast or an email or a particular event, because again, that's that one touch in many. But if I look back at from a campaign point of view, and I use my analytics tools or my MRM tools to be able to bucket things across the campaign, then I can start to say, I put this much money into this campaign and we drove these business outcomes.
Well, and that's also the great thing about the ARTE model, isn't it? Each of these things is actually measurable. Awareness, revenue, trust, enablement.
Yep.
You can measure all those things, and you can decide what your target would be in each of those areas. That's fantastic. So it's wonderful to talk about art. Thank you very much, Jeff. We got, this week we did the football instead of the weather, and then we've done the topic. But as usual, we need to pick a song. What song are we going with?
To play out on a song. So I just, I was thinking about art and I came up with the song Paint Me by the Ohio Players. This is back from 1972. So this is back in the Wayback Machine, but they talk about paint me a picture. That's what you're doing with a campaign. You're painting a picture for your prospects and your customers, and hopefully they like it.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. I had to look this one up, but it's an absolute classic. Thank you very much, Jeff. And will I be joining you in the studio next week?
Absolutely.
All right, mate. And by the way, just a little. Our mutual chum, Grant, former boss, CMO of Embers, is going to be on the show week after next. I'm chatting to him this evening. So
awesome.
There you go. So
say hello, plug. And I'll look forward to hearing his wisdom on the podcast.
Yeah, and it won't be this week; it'll be the week after. So yeah, Grant Johnson will be back on the show. All right, mate. I thought I'd mention that. And so I'll see you next week.
Awesome.
Cheers, buddy. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye.
Well, let me tell you.
Thank you, Jeff. And that was Paint Me by the Ohio Players from 1972. Something new to me. But fun fact, it was the B-side of Funky Worm, which if you're a gamer, you might have heard in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Anyway, let us know what you think of the music or anything you like, really. You can find us at Rockstar CMO on LinkedIn or contact me or Jeff through our website, rockstarcmo.com. Right, it's time for me to go backstage with this week's guest, Richard Medcalf. He's the founder of X Quadrant and is an executive coach and leadership consultant to exceptional founders and CEOs who've already achieved incredible things and still have the ambition to achieve more in terms of their impact and influence. It's Richard's second appearance on the show. Back in episode 65, he shared some excellent insight from CEOs on their view of marketing. I'll include a link to that in the show notes. But this week, he's back to talk about making time for strategy. Hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome back, Richard, to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you?
Yeah, hi. I'm doing really well, thank you. I'm excited to be back. It's such a pleasure to see you again and to chat on this new topic.
Yeah, I can't believe that it's episode 65 when we had you. I mean, this is, we're in the 140s, so it's been a while. So good to see you. So for people that didn't listen to episode 65, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, it's my favorite subject, so I'll try to keep it brief. So I run a small consulting company, coaching company called X Quadrant. What I love to do, the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning, is to help extraordinary leaders, successful leaders, to reinvent themselves, to multiply their impact, to have a bigger impact on their business, on their people, and on their purpose, right? On the things that really matter to them. In a nutshell, I find that most high-performing leaders, they've got a great success formula that's worked for them in the past. And they've got to a certain level. Everybody's really impressed. But inside, they know they can go so much further. They can make so much more of a difference. And what I love to do is help them do that, help them kind of switch gears to operate at a higher level. And I do that whether they're a $2 billion company CEO, whether they're a startup, a founder, whether they're anywhere in between. And it's huge amounts of fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation last time. It's predominantly CEOs that you work with, right?
Well, not always. I work with other senior execs as well. But I do find that the broader the bigger you're thinking, and the broader your ability to make a difference, the more fun it is. I've got programs where I work with high performers, kind of coming up through the ranks. I work with executive teams. So I kind of say like CEOs is probably my sweet spot, but for me it's a psychographic, right? I'm looking for fascinating people who want to make big things happen, and that's really my filter.
Yeah, no, I like that, and also like I've spoken to a number of mentors and people that have been mentored, and it's kind of lonely at the top, isn't it? I mean, it's a cliche, but it's good to have mentors that can help you even when you reach those kinds of levels in the business, isn't it? That they can have somebody to bounce these ideas off of.
Yeah, I think you have two choices. You have complacency or mastery. Mastery is a journey, right? Complacency means you kind of actually get comfortable. What I find actually is one way of figuring out when you're in your comfort zone is because you're crazy busy. But because you're actually crazy busy doing the things that you know how to do.
Yes.
And the breakthrough tends to come when we slow down a little bit and work on the things that are a bit of a stretch for us. That don't come so much.
Right. Which is, I think that's a good segue to bring us to your book, actually. So you've written a book, Making Time for Strategy, How to Be Less Busy and Be More Successful, which is going to be released in January, I understand. I love the title. I mean, who wouldn't want some of that? I mean, how to be less busy and be more successful. It's a winner. So what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, well, it's a subject which I saw coming up in almost all of my client discussions. Again, somebody comes to me, they say, I've taken on a new role, I've risen up a level, or I want to get to the next level, or I want to see what's next in my life, in my career, and want to multiply my impact. And so we start to talk. Well, what's stopping you? And one of the first things is, I'm just bogged down with all this low-level stuff, operations. I'm crazy busy. I don't have time to think. I'm being pulled in a million directions. My stakeholders, my boss needs input on my board or my team, customers. 1 million projects. It's a nightmare. And so I just found that was the first thing we had to address very often. And so having done this repeatedly with all these different high achieving execs, I then ran a program for mid-level managers and high achievers coming through called the Productivity Accelerator, refined these ideas with them. And I started to realize, this is a body of work which is emerging. There's key ideas and key thoughts. And I have a bit of a different perspective on how to break through, which we can perhaps get onto. And so I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to document these insights so that more people can actually benefit from them without having to sign up for high-end coaching packages.
Yeah, I love that. And I, again, some of the conversations I have on the podcast where people have that's what it's come through. It's come through their experience. They've found that they've codified kind of their practice and they want to share it, right? And they want to share it in a book. So I think that's really, and I always love talking to authors because many of us have a book in us, right? So I'm always interested in that process. But it sounds like great advice for any leaders, but why do you think it's really important that we make time for strategy?
Yeah, so there's two things. There's why is it important and what's the problem? So why is it important is what I call strategic time is your number one key performance indicator. So strategic time is the time we create in our week to invest in making things easier in the future. It's for the thinking and the doing of the projects which are going to catapult us forward. Why it's your number one performance indicator is, let me give you an example. When I was in consulting early days, most of my colleagues, as analysts, we were responsible for building business plans, Excel models, this kind of thing, very complex, sophisticated ones for investors. After a few months, I realized, each project we start from scratch, but there are things we could do. I could build a template here. I have to make it flexible. So I built this beautiful template. It looked great. It was flexible. It had charts built in, had little modules I could copy and paste to rapidly build up different blocks of different costs and revenue sources. And for weeks, people were going, Richard, why are you spending your evenings doing this geeky stuff when you could be out? Yeah. Because you've done your client work. You're not getting paid for this. No one's asking you to do this. Why are you doing it? I was like, well, it's fun. Yeah. Sad old me. But what I found was that when I finished it, suddenly a thing which took my colleagues a week to do, I could do in a morning. Right, and my output was better looking, more polished, better charts, more insights because I'd built in functionality that most people didn't have time to do. And so suddenly I got a great reputation for amazing work. B, I had this time available that I could then invest in the next level activities. So whilst everybody else was coding Excel, I was interpreting results, building presentations, doing business development, learning about sales. It's why I became the youngest partner, I think, ever in that company. Not just because of that one thing, because of that mindset that I'm going to invest time that's going to free me up in the future for more strategic things. So this is why it's the number one metric between people who are crazy busy on the hamster wheel and never progress, and those people who seem to continually rise and do more and more interesting things. So strategic time, it's so important. And then perhaps, well, let me stop there.
No, it's great. So it's important for the business as well as for the individual, right? That you have leaders that are thinking in this way. I mean, it's good for all of us, right? Yeah,
because you're breaking through a new barrier. It is incremental progress, and you feel productive when when you're running fast, delivering on goals, knocking things off your to-do list. But it's actually incremental, and it's what I call the infinity trap. So we live in a world of infinity. We've got infinite everything, infinite messages coming, flooding into our, non-stop messages coming in, infinite videos and podcasts and blogs, books to read, right? I've got another one to the mix. Infinite things you can stream on Netflix or whatever it is, right? Infinite people you can contact on social media. So we can't deal with this through productivity. But what we try to do is we go faster and faster. As I said, we feel good. We feel like the superhero. We're making things happen. We're crazy busy. We quite enjoy it, but we get tunnel vision. We stop. We don't see the opportunities to break through that are just because we're running so fast. It's like that, that YouTube video of the basketball team. Have you seen this one? They're passing a basketball. The game is you've got to count how many times they passed the basketball. You're watching them, and in the middle of the video, a guy in a gorilla suit walks past and waves at the
Right. Yeah.
And they say, "Did you see the gorilla?" And the guy, everyone's like, "No." And
no,
right there, we didn't see it because we were focused on something else, and that is the infinity trap, and it's why people get stuck.
Right. And so you've obviously talked to a lot of leaders who are in that infinity trap. And I also like the way you use the word, the hamster wheel, which I often use in marketing, which I'll come to in a sec. But what are the challenges leaders have seen, like, in doing that? Is it just simply that there is an infinite number of distractions or things that they could do and make themselves feel good and feel busy? How is that the main challenge? How do people overcome that?
Yeah. So the big insight that led me to decide I needed to write this book rather than just recommend some other book was that was that most people try to address this through improving their productivity, but actually you end up going faster. Sometimes people try to prioritize and cut things out. It doesn't seem to work, and the reason is there are 4 things that you actually need to address. And so I found, working with my clients, that in different order we'd have to look at all these different things. And lucky for me, when I stepped back and thought about them, I realized they spelt the word time, which was my which was a great acronym for the book.
I was going to ask you about this. Absolutely.
Yeah. So time stands for these 4 areas. So tactics, influence, mindset, and environment. So if you don't address all of these factors, you're probably not going to make things happen. So tactics are, first of all, you do need some tactics. You do need to perhaps reevaluate your workflows. You do perhaps need to look at how do you manage tasks, meetings, requests on your time.
So this is the basic getting things done. How do I actually structure my day?
So
how do I structure my goals and all
so this stuff, exactly. But a lot of people are missing a few key elements. And so it's worth looking at that. But more than that, it's also a question of how are you going to, what is your tactical plan to actually free up a meaningful amount of time over the next few weeks? Like, we often tinker at the edges. So we need a tactical plan. Okay, so that's the first part. But you can't actually implement that plan without stepping up as a leader. So the next one is influence. When you go, if you try to go on a diet, you'll find that the biggest people that sabotage that diet are your own family, because they want to eat chocolate cake and they're feeling guilty with you sitting there virtuously with your apple. Or if you want to go running, your family are like, "Oh, stay in and we want to chat to you. Don't go out, don't leave it raining." And so often the people around us actually bring us back to what's comfortable for them. In the business situation, if we need to reevaluate how we use our time, elevate our focus, we need to actually renegotiate commitments with our boss, with our peers, with our team, with other stakeholders. And so influence is key. So are you actually able to make that happen? That's influence.
Is there a lot of that around? Like, are you sort of managing upwards and downwards? So you're sort of like, maybe there's tasks that you're doing that maybe your team could actually be a bit more autonomous and not need you, or actually saying to the boss, "Look, I'm not going to
do this anymore." I'm not going
to be available,
or in the same level of detail, or whatever it is. So there's various levers. There's 5 levers in the book I explain about.
Because meetings are the biggest issue, aren't they, most of the time for most people, aren't they? It's managing how many meetings you're in.
Yeah, so I give various tactics, about like how could you potentially reduce your commitments to meetings. You can't necessarily delete them all from your calendar, but what can you do? So influence is that second part. And then we get to mindset. For many people, that might even be where they want to start, because it's what we believe is necessary, possible, and desirable that actually drives what we do. So you can build your plan and have all your ideas about what you think you should do, but you don't do it. And when you dig in, you find it's because you're a responsible person, and not doing that would be irresponsible. Or, you're a high achiever and you love churning stuff out, and stopping that and thinking would be a bit edgy for you. There's all these different areas. We probably don't have the time right now to go into all of the different ones, but it's all these areas that I need to kind of hack your brain a little bit. So you can realize that the thing that you think is reinforcing your identity is probably actually not serving you or the people around you.
Is that like the stories you tell yourself, like about who you are and what it is that you want to do and that kind of thing, and getting that right, adjusting that? Is that what it is?
Yeah. So in a nutshell, let me give you just one example, super boiled down. one client I worked with was finding too much time in his email, not enough time on his transformational projects. The reason he was doing his email, when we really got into it, was that he saw himself as a reliable and trustworthy team player.
Mm-hmm.
We had a coaching conversation around it. He really ended up realizing, oh yeah, like all my stakeholders, they want me to, my investors, my CEO, my internal team, clients, they all want me really to focus on these transformational projects. And therefore, I'm being untrustworthy and unreliable and not a team player when I'm just doing the easy emails and not doing the big work where I'm really getting paid the big bucks, right? I should be doing these major projects. Once he had that mindset shift of actually what's being reliable and trustworthy is tackling the big stuff and not people pleasing, then things shifted for him. So I've really condensed the story, but you get the idea that that's his identity. Like nothing I said was going to help him if he thought that what he was doing was unreliable and irresponsible.
Yeah, I love that people-pleasing thing. That's a hot button with a lot of people, I think, and it's a very easy thing to fall into, isn't it? It's that Slack that pops up, or Teams, as I have on my day job, or the email comes in and you want to deal with it immediately and help them and do all that stuff. That's interesting. So that's the mindset thing. What's your fourth?
Yeah, so the fourth one after tactics, influence, and mindset is environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and environment is really because I wanted this book to be for leaders and not just for like general people, if you like, not just for everybody. And obviously you can apply this, for anybody, even if an individual contributor in a business, absolutely you can apply this book very well. But the environment is wanting to think as a leader in terms of how do I actually influence my company culture? So it might be you might want to start with just your team or your department or your immediate peers, or there's some microcosm of your culture where you think, what, this is not just about me. I need to create an environment where we're not doing all the firefighting, all the time, where we're not doing knee-jerk reactions, chasing shiny object from shiny object, where we're not just all in the weeds ourselves. And so how do I start to be a leader of change? And because even if I've become this super focused person, if everybody else is running around not getting things done on what really matters, the company's still not going to deliver what it's capable of. So environment is really helping people think through, how do I actually start to move people around me forward on this same journey?
Right. I love that you came up with this genius acronym based on the topic time. So tactics, influence, mindset, and environment. And just out of that, I mean, what do you think? I mean, the book's not out till January. I haven't had the opportunity to read it, but what do you think is going to be? What's the key takeaway? Is it one of those four, or is it something else people should get from this book?
Yeah. So, I think the key takeaway. There's probably many because everyone's got their own thing. So actually, what I've created. If you go to makingtimeforstrategy.com, you can find the details about the book, and there's a link there to a little assessment that I did that we've created. And the assessment actually helps you identify your overall score on this journey. So like, where are you? But also which of these four elements is perhaps the limiting factor for you right now? Because if you've got the tactics all nailed in, but your mindset is off, then perhaps that's where you need to start. So what I'm really saying is that the insight for everybody that's going to make a difference will be different for each person. So I do encourage people just to take that assessment. It'll be a great way just to kind of get a quick read on your situation and a focus area. But I think for me, the thing I see is when people really understand strategic time is my number one key performance indicator, because my future success will really depend on how much I get out of that hamster wheel and invest in my future and the future of the company. Yeah. And if I boil it down, the message for me is you have a choice of fear or contribution. Because normally we're stuck in fear of what people would think if we were to change, fear that like, are we going to start failing if we do things differently? Fear that our team can't pick up the slack that we're going to give them. Fear of, inserted here, right? Letting people down, not being seen as a team player, whatever. That's often stopping us. But that's like a selfish, like self-preservation thing going on inside us. And so in the book, I'm trying to call people up to contribution. If you focus on what is the most impactful thing I can deliver, what's the highest contribution that I can make, and focus on that, then actually you're going to create extraordinary value. You're going to move forward, and that, if you like, is the real deep level call for people.
I'm inspired by that, and I love that, and that's, I think that's a great part to end on, talking about your book. And I'd love to talk about your book some more. Maybe when it comes out in January, we'll have a dig into it. But for now, the listeners rather can find it at Making Time for Strategy, where that assessment is. So I'm going to move on to our final question, which, as you've already been through this because you were on before. So as you know, we have a regular feature, the Rockstar CMO Swim Pool, where when we last chatted, you nominated, and I was listening back to it, stop optimizing the funnel, you said, as it's a dangerous addiction, which I really like. Are you going to stick with that? Shall we keep that in the pool, or have you got a new suggestion?
I think, I still stick by that one. I mean, optimizing different parts of the funnel without looking at the whole, which is really what I was saying, is a key one. Although, given the theme of our conversation today, perhaps we should throw in stop saying I'm crazy busy, and instead say I'm perfectly busy, because the reality is we're not victims. We choose exactly the level of busyness that we have, and that's often a shock for people. They say, no, it's not me. I believe you, it's you. You're choosing that based on fear and other things. You're choosing the exact level of busyness that you have. So stop saying I'm crazy busy right now, and also stop saying it's going to be quieter next quarter, because it won't.
It won't. And especially wearing that as a badge of pride. I mean, that's what I'm learning from you from this, is that your busyness is not a badge of pride. The amount of time you can spend thinking and being strategic and making that contribution is a badge of pride. I really like that. So that's splendid. Thank you very much, Richard, for your time again. And when people spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you?
So obviously they can look me up on LinkedIn and say hello there, connect with me there. Just personalize your message so I know who you are.
Absolutely.
xquadrant.com is the business, and there's plenty of resources there about anybody who's serious about multiplying their impact. And then the book itself, go to makingtimeforstrategy.com to find out about that, or just head over to Amazon or whatever, and you can pick it up or pre-order it. And there's a whole bunch of juicy bonuses over the kind of the pre-launch period. So don't miss out on those.
I love it. All right. Well, I know that writing a book is half the challenge. The rest of it is promotion. So good luck with the rest of what's going to be going on until the book launches. So congratulations, Richard. I look forward to speaking to you again. And I will, of course, include all those links in the show notes. And I look forward to chatting to you again, Richard. Cheers.
Okay. Thanks, Ian. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, Richard. That was excellent. Always a pleasure to catch up with Richard. And his book is out in January. And as you heard, you can find him on LinkedIn and his website, xquadrant.com. I will, of course, include all his links in the show notes, which you can find at rockstarcmo.com. Right, it's time to wind down the week in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar and be transported away for a cocktail and a marketing thought with my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend, and welcome to the bar. It is great to be here. It has been a long week. It seems like everybody woke up and wants to do stuff to get to the end of the year. Everybody woke up and went, oh, wait a minute, all that holiday we took, we actually now have to do some work. So the drink is well-deserved this week, I'm sure, for all of your audience here in the bar. I have a fun one for us this week. It is fall, and it is the most wonderful, my favorite season, the most wonderful time of year. And so I thought this week we would do a little bit of a change of pace. We'd rarely do a vodka drink here in the virtual bar, mostly because, well, you're unlikely to have anything.
But then we'd never have anything.
Yeah, but more than that, I just don't drink that much vodka. And so this is going to be what we call it's very fall like. We're calling it a ginger chai cocktail. And you might think that sounds a little New Yorky. I don't even know what it is, but it's a really fun, lovely fall spiced kind of cocktail. And so the way it's made, it's very simple. When I say the first ingredient, you'll think, what? Chai concentrate. So chai tea being very, of course, popular these days. You can actually get chai concentrate pretty easily these days. Yeah. Most groceries will have it for making chai tea, of course, but we're going to use chai concentrate here. And if you can find one without anise, or do you pronounce it anise there? One of the two, the licorice, basically.
Yes.
Better. That's better because it's just, first of all, I hate anise, but second of all, it just tastes better. But anyway, but you can use really any chai concentrate that you find or that you like or whatever. And then the second is ginger beer, which is, I think that's a English pastime, so you'll be able to find ginger beer again pretty simply, and then vodka, and mixing those together, basically with you can do this as a shaken with no ice and make it really cool. You can throw a little dry ice in there if you want to have that cool little smoky sort of groove. You can actually put a little crystallized ginger on the side, for a garnish if you want to do that. But it's just a lovely, lovely, very spicy, wonderful cocktail for a fall day.
Oh, that's lovely. I love the way you describe this season as fall because you live in California, whereas here it's fucking winter.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Sorry, well, the way that I describe the English weather is sort of 50 shades of gray, right? I mean,
today we've got the very cold gray, so that's right. Why I'm like, fall. What's he talking about? But this does sound warming, and I do love a bit of ginger. It's very, very nice. And and you said that could be shaken or it could be stirred, or
yes, or just poured over ice if you prefer as well.
Right. Well, I'm going to pour it over ice.
Okay.
And
surprising.
You're stunning. Well, for people that aren't listening to the show every week, what happens now is I attempt to make the Robert's cocktail using only the ingredients on my desktop bar, and I have here some. I've got the Lunar Gin out. So I've got the Hendrick's Lunar Gin. The most English of vodkas, as we know.
Indeed.
And so I shall slop some of that into my glass.
This might actually work with gin. I haven't tried it with gin, but it might actually. This is one of the few cocktails that actually might work with a gin substitute.
I was actually wondering where you got this particular recipe from, because it's quite a peculiar one, isn't it? Is it something you concocted yourself or something you've tasted?
Well, I will tell you this: the ginger beer plus vodka is a pretty standard thing, right?
Put in the chai.
It's a pretty standard drink. Vodka ginger ale or vodka ginger beer, whatever the way you phrase it. But then adding the chai is something that I actually learned from my wife, who loves chai tea, and I was like, and I don't love chai tea. So I actually, for this drink, to be clear, I actually only use a very small amount of chai because it just gives it a little bit of a different kind of flavor.
Jolly good. Well, while we were chatting, I then, you might have heard me open a bottle of something.
Did I talk over your amazing sound effect? Is that
The thing is, no, because it's not a sound effect. This is the bit that I don't edit. This is genuinely things happening on my desk.
Oh, all right.
So I just opened a bottle of Fever Tree cucumber tonic water, which I think is the most English of chais and gingers. So I'm going to give this a taste. What are we calling this?
We're calling this a ginger chai cocktail.
This is delicious. I could drink one of these every week.
suspect you will.
Very nice and very warming. I love that. And where would one go in the Californian? Well, we might not be in California. Where are we going to go for drinking these lovely drinks?
Well, it feels like we should be somewhere fall and autumn-like.
Yes.
Yes. And so there is it's a little late for this, but the changing of the leaves up in the upper northeast of the U.S. And so somewhere just north of Boston, or up in Maine, maybe, in one of those little coastal seaside villages would be just lovely, because it's one of those places where there actually is a fall, and not different shades of gray, I should say, but beautiful fall foliage, and it feels crisp and wonderful in the air, and we can sit, in big woolly sweaters, on an old dock somewhere, looking out at a lake or a bay, and just enjoying these ginger chai cocktails. Probably not with ice in them, because it'll be a little chilly. But yes, that's in a late afternoon, on a Sunday or something.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think we are a little bit late for the
a little bit late, yes, indeed.
As we are, it's actually December. Can you believe it's December already?
I know, but anyway, it's amazing.
It is amazing. And when the conversation and this wonderful doc turns to marketing or whatever it is that we want to talk about, what's the topic for this week?
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about audiences here, and specifically purple audiences. And I know that sounds a little weird. But so one of the things that I have learned, right now we're in this very weird state of the world. And this thing that comes up, I learned this back when I was in a .com company, when I first started really getting into digital and marketing and caring about the stock market and all that stuff. And one of my bosses originally told me this, and then I learned that it was a pretty popular sentiment, which is the stock market is not the economy. And so, when you start looking at the stock market and the economy, they are two different things, and one is not an indicator of the other, typically. And that works we always think about it in, sort of good ways, that, in other words, if the stock market is crashing, it doesn't mean the economy is doing badly, but it's also vice versa. If the stock market is rocketing, it doesn't mean the economy is always great. And so that's true. And I've watched it be true. And it's amazing to me that most media companies, mainstream news being most pointed there, don't actually, they don't, that's not the narrative, right? The narrative is if the stock market's crashing, we must all be going to hell in a handbasket. And so the interesting thing to me is that it brings up another corollary that I learned also 25 years ago as I started getting into the media business and working for media companies, which is that popularity does not equal differentiation. And what I mean by that is that, you can, and it's also a double-edged sword, which is you can chase trends and you can feed really popular content to your audiences. Basically, speak what everybody else is talking about, right? Just try and be louder, try and be, as popular as you possibly can, feeding the zeitgeist of the day. And that's not going to differentiate your content. But on the other hand, that you can start to think about trying completely, off topic, new audiences, new topics, new content. And that doesn't always work out either, because, you're speaking, you're sort of dropping your, it's like spitting into the sea, as it were. And it brings up this book from 2004, a great book, by the way, that I would recommend to your audience, called Blue Ocean Strategy, which is basically distinguishing the idea between what they call red oceans, crowded markets, where popular products are everywhere, and basically it's cutthroat sales, discount marketing, all those kinds of things in those kinds of markets, and battling there. And then the blue oceans, which are undiscovered markets with basically nobody in it, where you can create these new customers, or the other side of it, of course, is you can die alone. And so their whole point of that book is how to look at different markets and take different approaches for each. And when we see content marketing, what we see most businesses doing for content marketing is this short-term, hyper-focused feeding of red audiences, right? We're trying for popularity. We're looking for SEO to get the most popular content, to fight for that Google first page, for the most trafficked first page. We're trying desperately to feed the content most popular. And then we start thinking, well, let's do something different. Let's actually go into a new audience with a new topic that is completely differential in from what the popularity is talking about. And that doesn't work either. So it's like, well, what do you do, right? And one of the things that we've seen really work that I think is really interesting is sort of moving one from the other, or moving one to the other, I should say. In other words, trying to get a blue niche in a red world. And it's this idea of getting a purple audience. And what it is this sort of looking at your red ocean of all of the popular content that's out there and what's feeding that frenzy, and then finding a niche audience within there and trying to pull that audience out of it. And really feeding in a differentiated message within that. And that's what you can kind of see with what's going on now with, the way that media companies tell different narratives to a popular, it's what really good media companies do, right? They find their own narrative within the most popular topics. And that's something that we marketers can really learn from, is finding the niche, differentiated areas and audiences within that red audience and pull them in and start to make them our own based on a differentiated narrative within that popular topic, making them purple, as it were. And that's a great hedge on your current efforts, right? So having some level of investment on doing that is a good thing, because it sets you up for, if it actually turns out to be true, and you can pull that audience. Well, now you've been doing it for 2 years or 3 years or 1 year, and you've got a great foundation for it when people go, oh, theirs is the right answer. Or two, if you actually do believe the whole consensus and popularity is wrong, in other words, really going out with a counter message to say, this, what everybody's talking about is wrong, and we believe this. Or three, when you see that opportunity to steal some audience from someone that's actually gone viral or gone in some ways, created this popular topic, you can actually go, we can steal them by just focusing on this one little piece of that and really pulling them out. So those 3 areas, I think, are great, interesting areas to think of as we're starting to look at what might be an economic downturn, or what might be an opportunity in the new year for us to do something really different with our content.
Yeah, no, I really like that. And I think when I don't think I've read that book, but I'm familiar with that concept, that blue ocean, red ocean thing. I think that's been talked about quite a bit, unless I have read that book and I don't remember. But that purple audience is great. And this, you can apply this also, I think, particularly in the world, I live in, the B2B tech world, where we're always trying to redefine categories and find that blue ocean. And like you say, you die alone because nobody's looking for you, right? And but at least you're different, right? So I think that's really interesting. Is that purpleness is how you can flirt with the popularity thing whilst being different enough, right? That people see you different in that big red sea. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. I mean, there's a great example of it, and we've been leaning on it as a wonderful case study. It's one of my favorite case studies of the last 12 months, I guess, maybe more, 18 months now. I mean, since COVID ended, was SAP. And, SAP, not generally known for their innovative content programs, but this one truly is. It's their, so they have their whole, what they call their future of customer engagement blog, right? I mean, it's a very unwieldy title for a very good publication. What they did during the pandemic was of course, everybody was, not necessarily B2B software companies, but everybody was talking about COVID, right? COVID this, COVID that, how you're going to get out of this, and where you should wear masks, and, blah, 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 blah. And that popularity, of course, you could try and feed into, but it would be really difficult. But you could also take the opposite effect, which is sort of sticking to your guns and only talking about thought leadership and customer experience and talking about, what you need to do for CRM and email marketing and all that. But nobody wants to talk about that right now. But you could. There's probably a niche audience somewhere that doesn't want to even think about COVID. And what SAP did was something really interesting. They sort of stole a segment of the audience really looking for COVID-19 coverage. They switched their editorial completely and said, here's what COVID-19 means to the future of customer experience. And so they partnered up with Johns Hopkins University and hospital to get the right medical information and data, and then mixed it with this sort of thought leadership around customer experience, and created a new purple audience by focusing in on that. Then when they swung that over, they basically took all those new people that they were getting in traffic-wise and converted them into subscribers, who then, when they pivoted back into the regular scheduled programming after COVID was over, they kept that audience, right? So they successfully turned a purple audience into a blue audience. And I thought that was just a really fascinating idea.
Well, the other thing that's core to that, I think, as well, is that you would already need to know what your own voice and narrative and what your core pillars are from your content strategy, wouldn't you? To then overlay them onto a popular topic. I don't think you could.
Well, it's
be
not only
totally
that, but
reactive,
it's being able to move, right? The challenge with most blogs or content platforms for most brands is that it gets so wrapped around the axle of quote unquote brand messaging that they don't have the ability to pivot their editorial strategy to something different. It's like, well, we have to talk about customer experience and software and email marketing because that's what our blog is about. That's, we are locked into that. It's like, no, it's not chasing your audience per se, but it's actually pivoting to what the audience is, because audiences change, right? Their tastes change, their preferences change. And so it's looking at your core audiences and understanding their needs and pivoting your editorial to their needs instead of your needs.
And gaining that relevance. I mean, like the SAP example that you use, they went deeper than the generic, we're there for you, we understand these are unprecedented times, right? They actually leaned into it and did something well. Oh, that's excellent. Well, we're coming up to time. Where might people find thoughts of a similar nature where you found your purple sea, Robert?
I have really been trying to get our own little domicile on the web updated and have been woefully unsuccessful at that. We do have some updates coming, but generally speaking, you'll find all this wonderful stuff at our website at contentadvisory.net.
Splendid. And when people spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you?
Well, they're not going to find me on Twitter. I've actually I have taken my pause and gone fishing on Twitter. And although my account is still active and I'm still monitoring for my mentions and those sorts of things and using it as a bit of a content research platform, but not talking these days. But LinkedIn, I am doubling down on LinkedIn, and I'm really enjoying my experience on LinkedIn there. And I'm experimenting a little on Mastodon. So come on over to our little Mastodon server. We're having fun over there testing that out.
No, it's splendid. No, it's really interesting, this Mastodon thing. And also I've noticed that everybody's going onto LinkedIn, and LinkedIn has to create lists. The stream is getting unbearable because everybody is now on LinkedIn. And
there's a lot.
I need some way of curating that experience, and I want lists.
There's a lot going on there for sure.
All right then, mate. Well, and more importantly for me, and I can curate this really easily. Are you going to be in the bar next week?
We will indeed.
I look forward to seeing you. Thank you, Robert. Love that Purple Ocean idea for differentiating our content. So that's a wrap on episode 143 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thanks to Jeff, Richard and Robert for sharing their insight. But most of all, thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. So what do you think? Does the world need another effing marketing podcast? How about letting us know with a rating or review in your favourite podcast app? Or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. Next week, Jeff will be back in the studio. I chat with my old boss, CMO at Embers, Grant Johnson, and Robert will be back in our virtual bar. Until then, have a great week, and hope you again join us here again next week on Rockstar CMO FM.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.